Lycaon Swift. At first I didn't want to cover this board because I think it's kind of hideous, but there are two reasons why I decided to cover it. First, the battery is huge, so the range is going to be massive. The second reason is that they told me they have a repair center in the US. It's in California. So if your product is defective, just send it back to their repair center in California. They're going to send you a shipping label as long as you're in the US, so you don't pay any shipping. You don't have to wait for parts from China to do repairs on your own. You just send it to their facility in California. Anyway, let's start talking about the board, starting with the deck. So this deck is kind of interesting. On their website, they say that it's a drop-down deck, and it sort of is, like kind of, sort of, not really, but like a little bit. It's barely noticeable, but it is a little bit of a drop. It's a little bit of a rocker shape also. The front and back tails are kind of angled upward a little bit, not a whole lot. But the middle is not really shaped like this. The middle is mostly flat. So it's like a little bit drop down and a little bit rocker shape. It's also got a W concave, which means like if you look at the board from the front, the middle kind of rises up a little bit. I don't think that's necessary on this deck, but it didn't bother me either while I was riding it. The concave's nice. Grip tape is not very rough. That's not really a good or bad thing. It's just how it is. The deck is not very flexy. I mean, it flexes a little bit, but it's mostly a stiff deck, which is fine by me. I like both types. I like both stiff and flexy, but if I had to choose one, I would choose a stiff deck. So I'm totally fine with the stiffness of this deck. But I don't like how this deck looks. Like the contour of this deck, it's so ugly. When I look down, it's like, oh my God, this is such an ugly board. So just don't look down. Like this notch in front, man, why do they have this notch in the front? Like, why? You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the time when Max slammed my board into a guardrail post. Oh. Just kind of breaks my heart. Okay, so that's the deck. The trucks. So the trucks on this board are kind of interesting also. On the belt drive version, they're using Paris-like trucks. They're not Paris, but they're like Paris. They feel pretty good to me. So what's different about them is that they have this little rubber ring where the kingpin goes. So I think that's I think my friend told me that's a slop stopper, or I forgot what he called it. But essentially that removes slop from the trucks, and it works. So when I opened up this board, the trucks were really, really tight. I've loosened them up to be pretty much as loose as possible. Like it doesn't look like it's that loose because you can still see threads on the kingpin, but you can't judge how loose a truck is by the threads on the kingpin. Like a lot of people make that mistake. But yeah, I've loosened them up. They feel totally fine. Like normally what happens when you loosen up trucks all the way is that the board starts to feel sloppy. This one, it feels fine to me. And I think it's probably because of the slop stopper or whatever those things are called. If you happen to know what they're called, leave a comment, please. Yeah, so I think these trucks, yeah, I like them. I think they work pretty well. On the hub motor version, I think they're using caliber-like trucks. Not calibers, but caliber-like. Not really sure why the belt drive and hub motor versions use different trucks, but they do. Let me ask about the bushing hardness. Oh yeah, I just remembered. When I first took out the board from the box and I inspected the trucks, man, they had a lot of lube on the bushings. I don't think you're supposed to have that much lube because they start to feel more loose than they're supposed to be. So I wiped off some of the lube. I think they put on lube so that the trucks don't squeak, but man, they used a lot of lube. I'm not sure if that actually affected the ride, but I wiped them off anyway. They're using a standard setup of cone and barrel. They look like normal longboard size bushings, so you can swap them out to whatever you want. But they felt fine to me. It's a personal preference thing, you know, but the stock bushings, they feel fine. Okay, he's gotten back to me. The bushings are 95A, pretty hard bushings. They didn't feel that hard actually. Well, they didn't feel that hard because, okay, the roadside bushings are using cones and these trucks are kind of like Paris. So naturally they're more turny. Motors, man, I never know what to say about motors because the motor wattage doesn't really matter actually, but it's using 5M belts. The hub motors, I have them. I haven't put them on. I don't really know if I want to. Oh, but I will use the hub motors, but I think I'll do that in a separate video because I have the, what's it called? Let me get it right now. I have the Cloud Wheel Donuts, so I think I'll try these on their hub motors. So normally I would prefer belt drive because belt drive is more versatile, but the main reason I prefer belt drive is because hub motors tend to be really uncomfortable. Like there's a lot more road vibration generally on hub motors compared to belt drive. So like, especially with these types of wheels, like these 90 millimeter urethane wheels, on hub motors, the ride is like just really jarring compared to using belt drive. Because with belt drive, you use actual wheels. But if you're gonna use hub motors with cloud wheels, I think that'll remove a lot of the vibration, or at least dampen the vibrations by a lot. And I think that's a good way to go also. So on a board like this, I don't think I'll be changing the wheels all that much. So I think hub motors is actually a good way to go. They're using the Hobbywing hub motors, which means they have a range of sizes from 80 millimeters and now up to 105 cloud wheels. And on a board like this, I don't think you'll go much bigger than that. Maybe 120. The motors, they're Hobbywing motors, which I guess a lot of brands are using now. X-Way, of course, Backfire, Wowgo now uses them, and Lycaon, they use Hobbywing's belt drive motors also. It doesn't say the size, but they're using 5M belts as usual. The battery is freaking humongous. Like, look at the size of this enclosure. So this is like a street style board. Most boards around this size, they use 90 millimeter urethane wheels, but they usually use either like a 10S2P or a 12S2P. This is using a 12S4P. I'm sorry guys, it's 36 cells. It's a 12S3P, not 12S4P, my bad. The watt hours is like 466 or something. I'll put it on the screen, I kind of forgot. So for my weight, on a typical ride, like a normal casual ride, I should get over 40 kilometers. So your range is gonna vary a lot depending on a lot of stuff, like your weight, how you're riding, the wind, the incline, all kinds of stuff. I have a table on my website, you can go take a look. I'll put it on the screen also. The battery cells, I think there is like Samsung 35E. Yeah. ESC is using Hobbywing's latest ESC, so it's got the smart turn on where you can turn on the board using the remote, or it's not actually turning on the board using the remote. It's got that standby mode, so you can turn off the board, which actually puts the board into standby, and then you can wake up the board or turn it on using the remote. That's really, really cool. I think all boards should have something like that. So Meepo uses push to turn on. I think that's fine too. Like just some way to turn on the board without having to bend down each time. I mean, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but like when you're actually using the board, it just makes using the board a lot more convenient. I guess that's about, portability. So the weight, I measured it to be 9 kilograms. For some context, most boards this size, they're around 7.5 to 8.5 kilograms. This one's a little bit heavier because of the battery, I guess. The battery makes up a significant portion of the board's weight. Naturally, with this battery being twice the size of most of its competitors, this board is going to be heavier. So that makes this board a little bit more difficult to carry because it's heavier. Another thing about that, I wish they had made the tail either just a little bit longer or curved up a little bit, just so that it's easier to pick up the board by stepping on the tail, because this board is really front heavy. Like, oh, it's actually not. No, it's not front heavy at all. What the hell? It's not front heavy at all. It's just heavy, but it's not front heavy. Why is it so heavy in the back? Well, anyway, I don't know. But yeah, it's not front heavy. But still, I felt like when I was picking up the board, stepping on the tail to pick it up was kind of difficult because the board is so heavy. So yeah, so I wish the tail were just a little longer or angled up a little bit. Now let's talk about the aesthetics, which is totally subjective, but like I said earlier, I think this board is hideous. The deck, I already talked about that. Like this black and white design, I'm cool with that. I think that looks pretty nice actually. But just the contours of the deck, ugh, so ugly. The enclosures, man, they look like toys, dude. Like, they look like, I don't know, it reminds me of G.I. Joe or something. It's just so, it's like they're made for 12-year-olds. I don't know, it just doesn't, okay, especially the ESC enclosure, because I know the ESC itself is much smaller than this. Is it necessary for the ESC enclosure to be this big? Like, I have a feeling this is all empty space, like in here. Yeah, because their newest ESC is like even smaller than than the previous ESC that every board was using. The battery, I understand, okay, yeah, it's gotta be large, but still, it's just, I don't know, man. I just feel like this enclosure could be smaller. And if it looked good, I wouldn't mind, but It's just, I don't know, I keep thinking of G.I. Joe when I see this. I guess some people might like it. For me personally, I guess it doesn't really suit my taste, but that's just me. That's just my subjective opinion. Overall build quality looks fine to me. I didn't have any screws come loose or anything. I guess that's about it. The overall ride, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think the trucks are pretty good. No slop on them. At least I didn't feel any. The turning, I feel is fine. The trucks are very much like Paris. Like they got these very open bushing seats, so it's very turny. Combined with the hard bushings and the slight rocker shape, the board is, I found it to be pretty stable. Oh, the acceleration and the brakes. I found the acceleration to be really good, but I did feel a difference between me riding at about 72 kilograms versus 82 kilograms. So the first time I rode the board, I wasn't carrying anything. And the second time I rode the board, I was carrying a lot of stuff. I was carrying a longboard and a backpack and with like some camera gears. And there was a noticeable difference in the acceleration. But that's true of any board. That's not limited to this board. That's just, I just felt like I should mention that. So how strong the acceleration is gonna depend on your weight and other factors. But compared to the competitors, I think the acceleration is good. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's on par. So overall, yeah, pretty cool board.